And we've got to touch on it. I mean, you're the Italian stallion here.
Yes.
You are half Italian. You flew back for this election. I mean, this is how crucial it was. So could you tell us a little bit more about the Italian referendum that took place last week?
Yes. So essentially, context behind this is in Italy, historically, you had joint careers in the sense that for judges and prosecutors, you could switch to being a judge from a prosecutor throughout your career. That changed with the Cartabia reform recently, and you could only do it in the first 7 years. And Meloni wanted to change that after having seen that there was historically this accusation, especially from Berlusconi, of the prosecutors and judges working together and block they said they were had very left-wing interests, so blocking migration reforms, that was Meloni's thing, going after the corrupt practices of Berlusconi.
Which is something that actually you've seen in the UK, the Conservatives and Reform have consistently said, like the judges are blocking it.
So this consistent accusation of left-wing judges. And to be fair, there is definitely an issue. These do work together. You have they're called pubblici ministeri, kind of public ministries, the judges that have a huge amount of power to go and pursue individuals. And in fact, many people who actually voted against the reform actually said, you know what, the separation of careers, weakening the power of the prosecutors is not the worst thing.
Okay.
What changed, though, is firstly, this needed a constitutional reform. And Italians are very attached to their constitution.
So are Italians more attached to the constitution than Americans?
I would perhaps say so. Now with Trump kind of going against the constitution and some things, I really think so. People say it's one of the best written in the world. And it obviously came together after the Second World War, the fall of fascism, and people really united from all aspects of the political spectrum at the time, from the Christian Democrats to the communists, to write together this constitution that has very rarely ever been changed. We saw most constitutional referendum attempts, except for very minor things like changing the seats in Parliament, have recently failed. Renzi failed it, Berlusconi failed it. Wow. Also, perhaps to a lesser case, there was a new system in which they would have created two separate bodies for the judges and the prosecutors and one whole supervisory body on top. And that would have been done by random selection of judges from all across the country, and a part that was appointed by Parliament. And so a slight loss of judicial independence there. But that wasn't at least the reason people said they voted against the reform, or what the left-wing opposition really pushed for, which in the campaign, which was about constitutional change, changing this historical anti-fascist constitution that had been put forward that had defended Italians for a long time. And of course, anti-Meloni sentiment. A lot of people that drove towards, you said, you know what, we're in favour of the reform. Actually, some of the parties in the centre-left coalition said they were actually in favour of the referendum because they said, we're in favour of dividing the ministries, prosecutors are too strong. But people within them said, we want to see a defeat for Meloni, and therefore we are going to vote against. And the reason that is very significant is that Meloni wants to do a far more serious, important constitutional reform after this, and that is making the role of the president, it's called initially the president of the council, is the name of the prime minister, much stronger, and make it stronger than the president itself, and make the prime minister also directly elected. It was to be tied to an electoral reform where the prime minister would be directly elected for 5 years with a 60% automatic majority for whoever wins. So you essentially become an unimpeachable, almost dictator for 5 years. You have a 60% majority with you, and you are directly elected by the people. And that makes it very strong. But that would have also needed a constitutional referendum. So Meloni went soft. She went, let's do the smaller one first. Let me get the win off that. It's something safer. And then maybe after that, I can think of doing a more serious reform.
So that was going to be my question, actually. So if Berlusconi himself has failed to make constitutional change, and Italians, as you say, love the constitution more than Americans, why on earth did Meloni try and push this through and ruin her so far, spotless record as the Italian prime minister?
Yeah. Well, she sees that prime ministerial reform as the major one. She thinks that, of course, what she has brought to Italy undoubtedly is the stability. It's going to be the only government maybe that ever makes it through.
That is crazy. Since 1948, you've never had a government that's completed a full term.
Berlusconi did a full term himself, but his government collapsed once during the term, so it was two different governments in it. Yeah, no one has ever done that. So, and she sees that as a fundamental issue with Italian politics. And she says that system with a directly elected prime minister, which is very similar to the one that exists in the regions in Italy, she says that would give the stability that Italy needs.
So she just wants to prevent Italians switching sides. Seems quite a reasonable thing.
Yeah. Except that, you know, like you start having a Liz Truss moment, and all of a sudden Liz Truss is really hard to get rid of.
Yeah, we don't want that.
And also, but the reason she went for it really is she had this support, you know. She hadn't had anything really go against her. She's managed to cut a lot of the deficit. There's been issues on growth. Italy has a huge cash injection from the EU in recent years, and she hasn't really been able to capitalize on that. But there's still growth going on. They're not in recession. So there hadn't been any big losses. The odd regional election, but in areas in which it wasn't detrimental for her party. So she said, you know what, we have this. The public supports the separation of judges and prosecutors. So this is the best chance we've got to at least get something.
But lo and behold, it's failed. It's 56 to 44, I believe.
Yeah, and it's failed in also many areas that historically backed the right, especially in the South, whose commitment to the Constitution has been always very strong in all referendums from the left or right.
I'm going to steal a headline here from The Economist. They said, in a very Gen Z fashion, Meloni's lost her aura. And obviously this is super important because next year, France has got a presidential election in 2027. Italy's also, well, not presidential, has got the prime minister election in 2027. Has Meloni stuffed it? Has she gone?
I don't think Meloni has necessarily lost a huge amount of support for herself. Maybe,
but you say that, but I mean, the tourism minister's gone, the justice minister's had to go.
That's what I think.
So she's made sackings.
That's what I think has been the worst choice of Meloni, actually, is to try and pin the blame. When Berlusconi lost, he came out on national TV and defended it. You know, he said, like, I am fighting still for the right things and continues to do it. Renzi lost, and he stood down. He said, I can't continue. What Meloni has done is just try and pin the blame on other people, sacking one minister, Del Mastro, who was relevant to the judicial reform and had shares in a mafia business. So that was fair. But then sacking a tourism minister who did have some scandals around her, but nothing to do with the referendum. And that has been the consequence. And she hasn't appeared in public media. So it's made her look very weak. And the other even bigger effect is that now the centre-left kind of broad front, as they call it, has unified. We've seen, they've all said, we have to now have a primary. There's not a clear leader there. We have to have a primary to elect a leader from this, and whoever gets elected, we're going to back them. And that includes people like Conte, the former prime minister, who had said before that he was against a primary. Now they realise that they can win, but they need to be together. Like they have been in regional elections, when they've gone together, they've been able to win. If they're split like last time, that's why Meloni won. She only got around 44% of the vote, her coalition, but the left was divided in three. So now they realise they have to go together, and this has given them the opportunity to do it, and they know they cannot go divided. It is now suddenly given the light to the centre-left, and it's also seeing some infighting in the right. The Berlusconi's party, which is a coalition partner, has sacked their parliamentary leader. There's people now wanting to push it into a more centrist direction. Berlusconi's own daughter trying to take control of the party. That kind of infighting doesn't go down well. And it's also happened at the same time. The foreign minister has been very weak on the international situation. And also the defense minister ended up getting trapped in Dubai during the war. So that's made them look very weak recently. But the centre-left's going to have to take that momentum and stay united through a potentially divisive primary in which they're going to have to debate a lot and make alliances maybe to go against other people from the centre-left. Never rule out the possibility of left-wing people infighting and causing it all to collapse.
Especially not in Italy.
Especially not in Italy. Any left-wing government that's ever been elected in the Second Republic has collapsed because of infighting within the centre-left coalition.
I love that. I mean, you tell me a bunch of new things, but they all sound very Italian, I must say.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good fun. It keeps it interesting. But it's 2027 is going to be very interesting then. So we've got France and Italy both going up to the polls.
Yeah.
Sure.
It'll be a major election.